We're good. The internet works.
All right.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to sit with us for today's distance learning session. Campari's been really fortunate enough to partner with Portland Cocktail Week to bring you some really cool content led by some really knowledgeable individuals from all over the country. We have an awesome speaker today. Today's course is stretching 6 cases of citrus to make 20,000 cocktails. This blows my mind. I was just telling Amy I don't understand how it works, and I'm really excited to hear about it. My name is Corey James. I am the brand ambassador for Montelobos and Ancho Reyes. Today's sponsor is Montelobos, which is perfect for today's session in terms of sustainability. Montelobos is a sustainably cultivated agave. We work with 5th generation Maestro Mezcaleros in a full 50-50 partnership to create our mezcal. Sustainably cultivated just simply means that we're helping these agaves to grow using sustainable and responsible farming techniques. The creator of Montelobos likes to say that you need to treat the earth like a bank account, and with farming these agaves sustainably and respectfully and responsibly. You take one out, you put 3 back in, which I think is really cool, and it's a really great way to look at it. And today's guest is Amie Ward. She runs her own business called The Health Tender, which I would love to hear about. She's also the Health and Wellness Chair for the USBC Chicago, and she pulls trucks as part of her Strong Woman community. Another thing that's blowing my mind. Too many mind-blowings today, Amy. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm so excited to hear about all of this stuff. And just so everybody knows, we will be taking questions. I'll be getting them throughout. If you have a question, throw it in there. If you want to learn or have a question about Montelobos or anything like that, throw it in there. They'll send it to me, and then I can address the question. But I'm going to turn it over to Amy because she is the expert here, and I'm excited to hear all of this. I've been waiting all week.
Well, thank you so much for sponsoring these educational series. This is really fantastic. I'm going to try to contain my excitement here because I absolutely love this topic, and I've never really gotten to talk about it before. We, jokingly call this another type of stretching class because I'm generally known for doing workout classes. Part of my business as the health tender, I try to work with bartenders and teach them how to take better care of their bodies so they can stay involved in our industry for the longest time possible. But a lot of people don't know that I actually am a bartender too, and I love bartending. Love bartending so much. So much that it was like a really difficult decision to step away and work on the health tender full time, but I know it's far more important to make sure that everybody stays healthy. But one of the unique things that I get to do is I'm the beverage director of Camp Runamok. I've been doing that for about 3 years. I started with my first session as a member of the beverage team in 2017 and began running the program after that. So as much as I had loved running bar programs, I absolutely love cocktail catering. And I know that's not something that's very, probably not something you're going to hear from absolutely everybody, but catering is my happy place. I thrive in high volume environments, and by adding the pressure of catering, where there's little to no control over the environment, on top of that, you get the happiest version of me right there. It's chaos and harmony all together at the same time. It's kind of like every single activation is like the final game in the playoffs to me. So that's where my happy place is. And every time I can find like some kind of sports analogy, I'm definitely going to throw it in there too. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my passion for catering, the tools and philosophy that I use at camp to keep waste at a minimum, and how to stretch all your perishables. In addition to that, I want to talk about building relationships with your brands that you're working with, and building a relationship with your team who you've never worked with beforehand, and other tips and tricks that I implement to make each week of Camp Runamok and the 20,000 or so cocktails that come with it a success. So the general way that camp works, I get in there a couple days early. We have about 6 days worth of activities that are going on. Each day, there are upwards of 3 activations each day. So there's like generally a pool party, a dinner, and then a nighttime activity. In each of those activations, which generally each have a different brand sponsor for each one, there's going to be at least 3 drink serves in each one. So if you take 3 times 6, you have anywhere from, and there might be more on some days, but there's anything from like 18 to 21 different activations individually. So 18 to 21 different parties that you're throwing each time. And within that, you have 2 or 3 alcoholic serves and at least 1 to 2 non-alcoholic serves, no ABV cocktails that go with it. And I'm making about, since we have about 200 to 20-ish people at camp each week, I'm not, the number kind of varies depending on the amount of leadership that we have in there. I am doing about 120 to 150 drinks for each of those serves. So if you math all that up, you get anywhere from like 15,000 to 20,000 cocktails that come along with it. That's ABV, no ABV, everything in between. So how does that get done? And how do you do it, given the resources that you are in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, at a children's camp? So limited kitchen space and tools, and it's Kentucky in the summer. So if you can imagine everything that might go wrong on like your busiest day of service, it will go wrong. It does happen every single time. And even with my like super type A planning skills, like literally everything goes wrong, and that's totally okay. So these are all like the magical things. This is why I love catering, because it's also like being able to MacGyver some stuff right on the fly and still make sure that everybody's
crafty. She's crafty.
Very crafty. So you want to make sure that, so I have a conversation with every single brand for every single activation that's going to happen. It's facilitated by the people at Lush Life, people who run Camp Runamok. And then I'm introduced into the conversation to find out what they're looking for each type of activation. I try to understand what their brand specific things are, what kind of marketing things they're trying to accomplish with it, and where do we go from there. What we take into account then, after understanding all those conversations and having more detailed specific things I'll talk about a little bit later, you plan out every single drink that you can possibly make. I have a pretty ridiculous planning sheet that I'll show you what I utilize. But even with my planning spreadsheet that I have already, even with all the detailed information for the Creation Gardens group that I get all of my fresh produce from, or Amazon stuff that I've ordered my tools or whatever additional things I need, stuff doesn't come in. Stuff doesn't come in, the wrong thing comes in, something's
always something.
Always something happens, right? So that's one thing to take into consideration. The other thing, being in Kentucky at a children's camp, is that there's inadequate power supply there. So Brittany managed to wrangle one of the coolest sponsorships ever with Poli-Sci a couple years ago, and I could not make their tools work on the current that was running through camp. So I had this rad anti-gravity plate that I was trying to freeze little garnishes on the fly for, and we couldn't get it to get cold enough just because there wasn't enough power supply.
Ah, that's so disappointing.
Right? So like the coolest toys you could possibly finagle, like we can't utilize them.
Yep.
In addition to that, like I can't use 2 juicers at the same time. I can't use a Vitamix and a juicer at the same time. I can't use my dehydrator and a Vitamix or whatever. Everything has to be on different circuits. So there's that to take into consideration. We also have frozen drink machines every single time. Everybody loves their frozen cocktails in the middle of a Kentucky summer. And we trip the breaker every single time while we're getting used to setting up for the week. So we have to run them on 2 different circuits outside, even though they're sitting right next to each other and there's only 2 plugs within like 100-foot radius of one another. So it gets really, really fun to work with all those different things. Boiling water in the morning for coffee is kind of tough too, because all the plugs at the front of the kitchen are all on the same circuit. Again, things can go wrong. So we generally do cold brew coffee to save us from that kind of thing. Being that we're in Kentucky, heat is the norm and it's also your enemy. So fresh garnishes have like 20 to 30 minutes of a shelf life maybe. And you have to keep in mind that my beverage team is working with a team who sets up all the activations, and they have to set up every activation about 2 hours beforehand. So there are multiple trips to get out to the location of where we're having that particular activation, that party. And we have to either hold the garnishes completely until right before the party starts, or we have to find a way to keep them cold. Either way, it's a tough gig. Dry garnishes can be impacted by the humidity, so we're definitely using lots of silica packets to keep them as dry as possible while we can. dehydrated slices of whatever you might be utilizing become weak and flimsy. Sugars and salts become damp and don't function in the way that you want it to.
Oh gosh.
Yes, there's
so
lots of things. Yeah, like everything goes wrong, but that's why it's so exciting, right?
Yeah.
It's all good stuff. You also have oxidation running at a much higher rate because of the heat in there too. So that can, kind of ruin your citruses that you're utilizing as well. In addition to that, we have the ice that we're using. So we're using, we do have a company that we order ice through, or it's basically just big bags of hotel ice, right? So everybody has their feelings about different ice. You can use whatever kind of ice, good ice, clear ice, big ice, Hoshizaki ice, hotel ice, shit ice, good ice, whatever, everything. You just need to be able to adjust to what kind of dilution that ice is going to add to it. So regardless of how you're building a drink, there's a heat factor, and the hotel ice is going to play into that. So hotel ice is wet, irregular, and it forces you to use a ton of it, right? So people might think that because it's so diluted and so wet that you might be able to get away with less and shake it quicker or whatever, but it does force you to use a lot of it to get the right kind of chill and dilution that you're looking for. It is a little bit faster to work with, so speed and high volume world, it works out really nice. That's kind of a perk. We also don't have the option of using chilled glasses when we're making serves. We are using recycled cups or compostable cups, which also have a fun thing of heating, melting in the heat. So got to figure out.
Just one more thing, no big deal.
One more thing, it's good, it's great, it's great. So we're batching out all the cocktails ahead of time. We are in batch bucket land. We batch out everything except for highballs, and we also add in the dilution to kind of make up for the fact that we're about to use that hotel ice. So, and we think about it in terms of like the ice starts to deteriorate the moment that it leaves whatever kind of cold vessel it has, right? Because it's getting into that Kentucky heat. So shaking cocktails can typically range from like 25 to 40% dilution with optimal conditions. Stirred cocktails, or you're looking for 25 to 40% in optimal conditions, and stirred cocktails we're looking for like 20 to 25. So we will reduce the dilution of the shaken batches to about 20%, knowing that the wet ice they'll be using to shake and serve it will make up for the rest of the dilution that we want. Stirred cocktails I'll dilute to about 18%. And then we work with our individual bartenders, because then not only is my team putting together all these cocktails, but then we have to hand off the cocktails to a group of bartenders, campers, who get to run that activation. It's generally one of their sponsors for their cabins. Usually it works out that way, not always. But then we have to work with those bartenders to the event to let them know exactly how much they should be shaking, stirring, timing, and things like that. So there's like batching, there's accommodating for all these different things that can happen. And then there's also translating that information to another group of people who have not been involved with your cocktails at all and trying to make sure it's executed properly. So,
you can handle a lot, it seems like.
Cocktail catering is so much fun. I love it. It's cool. I'm like super type A and also ADD, so it's my place.
Under pressure is when you work the best. I'm the same.
Heck yeah. So let's talk about limiting waste. I know that was kind of like the overview of like, here's what it looks like. There's a lot of different activations. There's a lot of different moving parts. There's a lot of communication that's necessary. Also, for that matter, the team that I'm working with, we've never met until that day. You might know people just because the bar world is it's pretty insular, so you know a lot of people. But we've only communicated via email before then, so we don't know each other's working style just yet. I try to set the expectation of what I'm looking for, but we're all trying to make this very cohesive team right off the gate. So it's interesting. Every team I worked with has been amazing, and I love them. They're my batch children. But it's really, really neat to find out just like what personalities like to do the laborious juicing, who likes to do the peeling, who likes to just batch, and who likes numbers. Like, you find out who likes what, and you get them into those right positions to make everything work right. So let's talk about waste. I really dislike waste. I do whatever I can. No, I really hate it. So, I don't hate a lot of things, but I hate waste. So I try to do whatever possible to circumvent waste and reduce the footprint that we have at camp. We use recyclable cups, paper straws we have, but we rarely use them anyways. Try to reduce that as much as possible. Lindsay, who runs all of Lush Life at camp, she has gone out of her way to arrange for private recycling since it's not really available in Lebanon Junction. So we've got that taken care of. And we want to make sure that the brands that are coming in are represented the way that they want to be. So what do we do when they're asking for all these different fresh garnishes, fresh juices, fresh whatever? I have a responsibility to do whatever I can to have that brand messaging very clear and their imagery to be represented in the way that they want it. But I have conversations with them to find out what that is, what we have some wiggle room on, what's most important so we can achieve a goal together. When there's a request for fresh garnishes that do not make or break the drink, they're more for aesthetic purposes, I ask if we can eliminate them or suggest an alternative, i.e. a dehydrated fruit version of whatever it is, fruit leather, which I love to make, and I'll talk about that in a bit, or making a fruit sugar or salt for a rim. Try to find something that we can do that might...
Don't just throw it away.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if it's just going to be an orange slice that's not going to be touched, I don't want to use that, right? So what do? I have a picture in here that I've shown a bit that shows like the first time that I worked on the beverage team, there was about 14 cases of each kind of fruit that was in. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And after I had the opportunity to take it over, I'm like, how can I fix this? How can I eliminate those things? And I started getting really smart about using every piece of every fruit that I could get my hands onto. I also started leveraging relationships with the bars in Louisville, asking for all their trash. So 3 years ago, I got a list of like all the different places in Louisville that might be doing fresh juices. And I asked if I could take all of their trash from them. So I got into...
Give me your trash. They're like, sure.
Yeah, your trash, lady. May I please have your trash? And I also asked for their spent juices as well. And I asked for this ahead of time to make sure that I could get my hands on as much stuff as humanly possible. I arrived in Louisville a couple days early, drive around, pick up all these things. And I'm basically like the trash lady where I have bags of garbage, husks, whatever it might be, spent juices, and I take them back to the kitchen and I work with them. So I am a huge proponent of making citrus stock. Trash Tiki has a fantastic skeleton for everybody to utilize, and I recommend everybody kind of go and check that out of how to make their stock. So I utilize husks from the trash that I've collected to make some citrus stock, in addition to the fresh fruit that I've gotten my hands on. I also use all their spent juices to make cordials or syrups, jams, whatever you might possibly think of. I love to take trash and turn it into treasure.
Most people should be like this, though. Most people should be like this. This is good information. This is the route we need to go down. This is great.
Yeah, it's fun too. Like it's a lot of times it's a grab bag of things. So I get like a trash bag filled of like every kind of husk. So yeah, you've got to like get in there and you've got to separate some things out. But ultimately, you've got so much treasure in front of your hands that you can do whatever. Like sometimes I'll find like spent ginger peels or spent ginger juice and I'll be able to make ginger beer. Like there's all kinds of different options of what you can do. I do that initially. And over the last couple of years, I had the pleasure of working with Chef Claire in the kitchen, and I get to annoy her to no end by asking her in the weeks leading up to camp to see what she might be cooking, what scraps of hers I might be able to use, and vice versa. And after 3 years working together, like we've definitely found a lot of ways in which we can do that, which is really awesome. And a lot of the stuff that we have to, a lot of things happen at camp on the fly. Most of it is not coming from, in the different conversations that I get to have with brands about their activations and what kind of drinks that they want. If somebody has a prescribed drink that they want to utilize a spec that they are sending me, cool. I don't stray from that in any way, shape, or form. I do have those discussions about the garnishes to see if there's wiggle room on that. But when there's an opportunity for my team to make a drink, we will have a general understanding of what we want to do for the drink. But because we might not receive some particular product or ingredient that we've asked for, we may have to pivot. Everybody understands what pivoting is now because of quarantine. Like, you make an adjustment on the fly, as long as you're making something delicious that still gives and represents the brand and the juice that's being, the alcohol juice that's being utilized in the best possible way, then it's good. We're good to go. But here's some things like scraps on the fly that we can utilize that get turned into something. Pepper scraps, beet scraps, all can be turned into some kind of vegetal syrup. Corn cobs and silks for teas and syrups. You can like dry the silks and turn them into garnishes, same with the stalks. Apples, strawberries, and other fruit scraps that can be turned into syrups or fruit leather. I love making fruit leather, which is just because I think I grew up on fruit roll-ups, which is why I love
Yeah, we're products of the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely, you know. So you can utilize all those scraps to turn them into fruit leathers or candied pieces, candied bits that can be used as garnishes as well. I was snacking on this beforehand when I was talking to you, but like watermelon, we're always going to be utilizing during camp, but I can take all the rinds and I can pickle them, which can become an amazing garnish or just snack for my team. Like, but as a garnish, they're fantastic. It's really important that we're using like every piece of fruit that comes in. So here's my six cases really broken down. I have maybe one grapefruit. I generally don't know if I don't necessarily need grapefruit while I'm at camp, but I get a flat of pineapples, a flat of watermelons, two orange, because orange unfortunately ends up having to be most of my garnishes that I don't have wiggle room on because of working with the brands. It's specifically what they want, so I can't get around it. And then I have lemon lime, and that might change in between those citrus, because if I can get a ton of scraps from somewhere, then I don't necessarily need to get as many cases of things beforehand.
Right.
But those are the things that I'm working with. And then with the watermelon, you can use every piece of the watermelon. With the pineapple, you can use absolutely every piece of the pineapple as well. You can juice it, use the scraps for tapache, and then utilize like as soon as the flat comes in, I have my team pick all the fronds that are out, and we package them and use them throughout the entire week. They can be decorative, but if you also cut them open, they have a lot of aromatics to them as well. So there's a lot of different uses for that. For oranges, when they come in, we'll make sure that we peel them first, then juice them if we need the juice, and then we'll utilize those scraps that are left over to make marmalade with, which can also be used as a cocktail ingredient too. So there's a lot of different options. I do end up having to bring in a bit of tomatoes, so I can make a tomato Bloody Mary for the end of the week, something I've done for the last couple of years. And we are able to blend those up, utilize that, give the scraps to Claire, which she can use in a pasta sauce, or we can dehydrate them and turn them into like little tomato chips for garnish as well. Like, there's all kinds of different options. So I'm going to show just some pictures real quick. Share my screen. Ooh, I will do that in a second. Leo, if you can let me share my screen when you get a chance, I'd appreciate it.
That's working now.
Okay.
Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Leo. Okay, play from start. Okay. So this is what I had when I first walked into it a couple years ago, and I definitely did not want to replicate what happened here, because this also ended up in a ton of waste by the end of the week. Like, a lot of the stuff was rotting to the point where we couldn't utilize it anymore afterwards. So this was my inspiration to change things. So tomato bloody, what I was just talking about, we use golden tomatoes for that. We salt them up at the beginning of the week, and we slowly get to juice them, get the water from them throughout the entire week. And then what we're left over with is this pulp, which can be used for pasta sauce, can be used for a lot of different things. But also over here, like showing on the Presto dehydrator, which is what we had at camp as well. This is what I have at my house. I love the Presto. I think it's so much less expensive than some of the industrial ones that are out there, and it gets the job done just fine. But you can turn this into cute little like tomato chips that can be utilized as a garnish for your drink. or utilize for some other kind of garnish for the week. Like, it's awesome because it is savory and it is a little salty and it's kind of unique and different. When it comes to bananas, if there are bananas that are going to spoil, generally Chef Claire will bring in bananas for breakfast during the week. And as they get to be gross during the end of the week, I can turn them into a couple different things. So first picture showing you like what I'm looking for ideally. I'm looking for bananas that are about to turn. I have a little bit of simple, a little bit of whiskey, and a little bit of vanilla bean paste. And I can turn that into banana cordial, which comes in here on the end on the right. I can use those peels and I can make banana tea, which is what I'm drinking right now. It is delicious. Banana tea can be utilized in a bunch of different cocktails. It's really subtle. It has that kind of like tannic taste, that tannic effect that tea generally does. So you can use it for a bunch of different ingredients for cocktails. And then at the end, you also, I didn't take a picture because I ate it all and I'm sorry, but you take the banana pulp, essentially that's left over from making the cordial, and you blend that really quick in the Vitamix, and then you can dehydrate that as well, and then you have banana fruit leather. So, and that can kind of be done, you can make fruit leather pretty much out of anything, like even though there's not, you're looking for pectin, high pectin levels, but it's absolutely not necessary to create the effect that you want. Cellulose is super helpful and will dry out everything into some delicious version of itself. Watermelons, what I was talking about here. On the left, just for funsies, this is a picture of a watermelon that I squeezed with my legs after being challenged to do so because I pulled trucks and I'm strong. This was, can I crush a watermelon with my legs? Yes, the answer is yes. So I take watermelon.
That is hilarious. I'm sorry, I can't, that's like it's so funny.
I have like a little, I'll try to like not geek out for a second. Here's some goofy stuff.
Yeah.
So we take our watermelon, we can juice it. If you have a little bit of the flesh left over on the rind, that is perfect for pickling. We just peel the outside green off of it, boil it down with some rice wine vinegar, whatever vinegar of your choice. Like, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but you can make delicious things with that. So those are all those things. I'll stop sharing. Yeah, so there's a lot of different options. So using every part of the fruit or vegetable is super important for us. Other things that we do for acids. So I know everybody really wants to know, like, what are you doing? How are you actually making this work? So there are my stocks. I always use stocks, but I also try to change up what I'm doing to bring the acid into my drinks. I use Kool-Aid, I use Tang, I use citrus powders, True Brand citrus powders, I use alternative acids, which if anybody got to watch Luis's presentation the other day, like, I'm not going to go into a huge discussion on acids since he has a lot of really amazing information that was in there, but I definitely play around with my acids. I acid adjust a lot of stuff. I use citrus concentrates, so like those frozen cans of Minute Maid limeade or lemonade or orange juice, I use those and I play up the acid that's in there. So with heat and humidity working against everybody's kind of palates, plus the fact that they've been in different distilleries during the day and they've been tasting a lot of stuff, their palates are fried. This is not the ideal time for everybody to do tasting tests of like the citrus that's going on here. No palate at camp is really able to distinguish what I'm doing and how I'm playing with these citruses that are on there. But I think that is kind of what makes a really good bartender, is being able to make a delicious cocktail with whatever tool that you're given. Even if you had to use Rose's lime, like, you should be able to make something good with that.
You can figure it out.
Right? Trust your palate and be able to adjust and understand it. So you want to understand your acids. You want to understand what flavor you're trying to get out of your cocktails. So that's why we're saying too, like, it's kind of a MacGyver situation when we get to camp, because yes, we might plan out all these cocktails, but if we're not able to test them out ahead of time, we have to test them when we're at camp, and we're going to have to adjust them on the fly. And that's totally fine. It's just being able to taste, make an adjustment, and know what the right adjustment is. So each type of acid that you have, every citrus, they have different sensory characteristics. It's not possible to simply like replace one acidulant with another to make an equal product. So you really need to taste, adjust, and really trust your palate. The different acids that we work with at camp are the same that most people have: malic, citric, tartaric, acerbic, and lactic acid. Malic is the really sharp and clean, found mostly in the unripe fruits, like apples. It's more tart than either the acerbic or the citric acid. Acerbic I generally use just for keeping color in things. I don't use it a ton in like making citrus solutions or acid solutions. Tartaric is the super sharp and clean, has that really good drying and tannic effect, so we can use some kind of like combination of these to achieve the taste that we want. Yes, but again, look at Luis's presentation because he went into everything like crazy. I also love vinegars. So I use vinegar in a lot of different things. I make my own shrubs. Thankfully, this is where the heat comes in super helpful in Kentucky, is if you're making the tepache with the pineapple, thanks to Kentucky heat, it's super easy to ferment, happens very quickly, so you don't have to worry about having a lot of time for it. Same with vinegars. I love making beer vinegars to play around with things. So you take, I suggest everybody play around with vinegars a lot at home, as long as you're taking something with like, take a bottle of Bragg's that has a little bit of the mother inside of it already and mix it with some of your like flatten some beers that you like to play with and see what different tastes you can get out of things. So like stouts, porters, lagers, ales, they all produce a different kind of taste. And I love playing with stouts and porters to put into a lot of things. Same with wheat beers. I don't like a wheat beer normally, but I play with a wheat beer and some vinegar and turn it into a very fun thing to play with in my cocktails. Also, just using plain vinegars by themselves is really fun. Knowing the difference between your vinegars is really important, and being able to taste them and understand what you can play around with them in to get different effects in your cocktails. You have sherry vinegar, balsamic, white vinegar, apple cider vinegar, rice wine vinegar, red wine vinegar. There's so many different types of vinegars that you can play with, and knowing what they taste like, what their profiles are like, and how to kind of like trim down how much you're putting in your cocktail to make sure you achieve the right kind of taste you want, so it doesn't just taste like vinegar, because I know that's like, it can be an offensive taste to some people. is a good way to really make sure that you're taking all those things into consideration.
I do have a question from somebody, if you wouldn't mind. Somebody has asked, are banana peels toxic? I actually feel like I've heard that before too, but maybe you can discuss if it's true or not.
I think it really depends on if there's like pesticides and things like that that are on the banana. You need to wash your banana peels before you put them into a solution to turn it into a tea. The simple natural soap and water will be perfectly fine for that. I have not had any concerns about playing with the peels. I don't ingest peels by themselves. Yeah. I'm usually getting all the taste off of the pulp and things like that. But
just maybe wash your fruit.
Yeah, wash your fruit. Be aware of pesticides and things like that. I wouldn't necessarily ingest a peel. There's tons of like antioxidants that are in a peel itself, so I don't believe that they are toxic, but I cannot be quoted on that entirely. I will go and research. I know that the way that I'm making them is safe.
Right. You're still alive. You're still here.
I'm super here. I'm drinking this.
Exactly.
My unsweetened banana peel tea, which I find delightful. So, yeah, play with your bananas.
Yeah. Boom, boom.
So yeah, acids, being able to play with acid solutions. I also think it's really fun to play with sherries, things like finos and olorosos, and adding adding an acid combination to them, plus a little bit of fruit oil. Natural fruit oils is a really fun way to play with like the drying, the texture, the whole palate. The mouth gets like a really fun gamble when you play with sherries in there too. So you can turn proper sherries into an acid vehicle as well. And that's just being able to play with your different acids that are in there. I also, again, I have no problem playing with true brand acid powders because they do what I need to do.
Yeah.
If my fruit is already going to oxidize at a much rapid rate in that heat, and that's a heat that I can't control, I don't have like an environment that I can put these cocktails into that keep them cold other than just having ice. Like you're out in 90+ degree heat the entire time. If that's already going to deteriorate the natural product that I have in there, that is why I find no problem adding in the True Blend or the concentrates that come from like the frozen section of a grocery store. They work fine. And I think that everybody needs to play and trust their palates to turn something like that they might turn their nose up at initially, to turn it into something that's delicious. Another thing that was like wonderful in this past year is that Monin became one of our beverage team sponsors. So we got to use all their syrups, and they make some core syrups that are fine on their own. Like they have a lime syrup, a lemon syrup, a key lime syrup, all those things that I love. Like they're fantastic on their own. And if you're trying to achieve something different with them, you can acid adjust those syrups as well and turn them into something magical.
Wow.
And it's easy to do that too. And even though they are syrups, which means they have a sugar content to it as well, there's a lot of sugar that is going to be played into these cocktails. Like a lot of cocktails, most cocktails have some kind of, not most, a lot of cocktails have some kind of sugar component. I'm also making a ton of frozen cocktails. So that is something that always goes into consideration, is making sure that I have the right sugar content to get things frozen. So Monin has been a lifesaver. They have so many different flavors, and you can play with all of them, and even adding some acids just for a different mouthfeel for texture-wise has been a lifesaver. And also, like, I don't even have to make simple syrup anymore because theirs is a perfect one-to-one that never have to do again. So it saved me so much time. It was amazing.
Well, if they can't make a simple syrup, then I think there's something wrong.
Yes. So garnishes. Garnishes are what account for a ton of waste in every bar, every program, every catering situation. I know I might ruffle feathers when saying this, but I do not care for a garnish unless it adds to my cocktail, whether it's for aromatics or for taste or for textural experience. If it's not for that, I don't want it. Aesthetically pleasing purpose garnishes are a no for me personally. And I think that's really important when also trying to like consider budgetary things. But if people really want to garnish for aesthetics, I'm going to make sure that it's going to be something that I'm not wasting in the process. So I carefully plan out the amount of, that'll be the next thing I show. I still need to show my spreadsheet. I do plan out very carefully the amount of juice and the garnishes that I need for the week, so that on day one, if I have to have some like citrus wheels and I can use them in dehydrated form, like that's already been given a thumbs up for me, I'm going to dehydrate all the things I need on day one, keep them in an airtight sealed silica packets, and use them throughout the week. And then I'll also peel all the things that I need. Peeling is a little bit more delicate because obviously that works on a day-by-day basis because that's more fragile. But I'll peel what I need to make all my oleo. I'll peel what I need for the day of for garnishes, if that's a requirement. And then I'll use the rest of that piece of fruit to juice, turn into syrup, jam, whatever it might be, and go from there. If people desperately want a watermelon garnish on something, and I don't have watermelon to spare, I'm going to see if I can use a pickled rind. If I can't do that, then I'm going to get a little gummy watermelon and garnish it.
That's cute. I like that.
It's still visually adorable. Plus, it tastes pretty neat too. So, like, it's obviously a very delicate balance because, again, I don't want to disappoint any kind of brand. I want to make sure that I'm getting their messaging across. I want to make sure that everything that they want delivered in that cocktail is there, but I want to do it without trying to waste anything. So that's where it comes into, you know, being able to use every part of the pineapple and use, like, have everything there, be able to use the garnishes from there. If people desperately want a garnish, but they don't have a functional one that they want to use, if my fron that I have extra laying around will work, boom, I'm going to use that, because that's the way I feel about garnishes that don't actually play into a cocktail. Like if I'm just going to add something to add something, then I'll add literally what I have laying around me to make sure I can get that.
Not wasteful. You don't want to be wasteful. That's your whole aesthetic. I think I agree with you 100%.
Other cool things that you can do, something that we were planning to do this year because we have Goose Island is going to be a sponsor. So they're sending me with a bunch of spent beer grains that I can make cookies with. Or like you can also, you don't have to do cookies. You could dry them all out and make them into cute little like chips to put on for garnishes as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, making, use your grains for cookies and garnishes, make your fruit leathers, do your dehydrated stuff, whatever it might be. If people want to utilize, if we're just doing like an expression of appeal and we're gone, I'm going to ask if I can utilize a high grade food oil in a really good diffuser in place of that. Like if we're just going to be wasting that peel anyways, then I'm going to see if I can avoid that, or I'm going to have people save every single spritz that they do and put it into a container so I can utilize the rest of those peels for oleo a little bit later. Of course, after they're washed off and move from there. Like, I just want to use everything. I like to turn trash into treasure. And another last little thing before I want to talk a little bit about frozen drinks, because I think everybody loves frozen drinks. It is going to be my group of people that are making all of those 20,000 cocktails during the week. So you need a little bit of variety. You have a lot of different brains that are going into this project. Like any opportunity that I have where a brand says that you can come up with a cocktail, I'm divvying it up to my bar team, because I want them to feel the same ownership in this program that I do every single week. And I know that's really hard to create in a like kind of ephemeral experience of only 1 week together. But I absolutely dish out different cocktails to them to be able to make everything. What we try to do is make sure that there's variety. So long drinks, short drinks, frozen drinks. I love Jello shots. So, and I also love making fancy Jello shots.
Yay!
So we try to reimagine our cocktails in the form of, like, we've done a Ramos Gin Fizz cocktail, and it was fantastic. Like, we did that. French 75, Last Word. You do everything you possibly can to make it creative, imaginative, and really, really fun. The other thing to take into consideration when we're doing all these things, I know that there are vegans, and I know that there are people with different allergies throughout camp. Thankfully, we get a notification of who has what allergies or dietary restrictions ahead of time. In catering, you are working with a large group of people, but that also means you need to be able to appease all dietary restrictions, all like things that are going on for a person. So all of my stuff is as vegan as humanly possible. If I'm ever using any kind of whipped topping, I'm making sure that it's vegan friendly. I know that I have dairy restrictions, so I'm trying to think of like things that I want to be able to enjoy things the same way that everybody else does. So always taking into consideration dietary restrictions, allergies, everything in between there. So that means making all the things that you want that are super easily done in non-vegan form and finding a way to make it vegan. Yeah. Very, very clever. So yeah, Jello shots, always Jello shots. Love, love, love Jello shots. And last thing, there are so many frozen drinks at camp. So many. There's at least
hot. You have to have them.
Yep. So frozen drinks, there's a lot of different views on what kind of Brix level you're looking for. Brix is the unit of measurement for the sugar content in a liquid solution, with 1 degree of Brix equaling 1 gram of sugar in 100 grams of water. Brix is measured with a refractometer, which is looks like a cool little magnifier, which basically just shows how the light refracts through the liquid to determine the volume of the dissolved solids, such as sugar, within it. Brix help determine the consistency of the frozen drink that's coming up. It determines how the drink freezes, and it absolutely affects the quality of the product that you're putting out. Proper Brix measurements have to be followed, or else you can damage your frozen drink machine. It's also really important to get to know your frozen drink machine. Thankfully, we've used the same company for the last couple of years. I know now how to take apart the frozen machine and put it back together when it inevitably is going to fail. We get 4 of them for camp each week, and one always dies on day 1. And then you're down to 3, and then there's all kinds of different things that happen within that. So the way that frozen drinks work, generally water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, forming ice crystals that eventually solidify into ice. Sugar particles are suspended in water, making that freezing process more difficult by physically hindering the crystals from bonding to one another, the ice crystals. So when more sugar is present in the mix, the formation of the ice in the liquid is inhibited, which means it must be colder before it will freeze. And this is especially true in a frozen drink machine that keeps the mixture moving the entire time. Not checking your bricks will lead to solid blocks of ice forming and a burnt out slushy machine, so you want to avoid that at all costs. On the flip side, bricks measurement that's way too high will prevent your drink from freezing at all into the slushy texture that you want. So ideally, what I figured the best bricks level that I want for that Kentucky heat and the machines that I'm using is 18 bricks. And I know that's not the same for everybody and what different machines you're utilizing and what controlled environments you're able to have. But when I have this particular high volume slushy machine going outside in that heat, I'm keeping it up at that 18 bricks level. My dilution is generally around 25 to 30% for those, because you need water, you need the high sugar content in order for it to freeze. That is the particular happy place that I have found for those machines. And again, I know it's different depending on what frozen system that people are utilizing. But yeah, so we do lots of different frozen drinks. We do lots of Jell-O shots. We do lots of different fun things throughout the week. Yeah, and it's a whole lot of it is adjusting on the fly. It's lots and lots of planning, but it's also adjusting on the fly. I'm going to share my, hold on, I need to bring this back up.
This all sounds like we're running this Camp Runamok event there's so much compartmentalized at once. I'm like I'm blown away. So you blew me away. Great. You did it.
This is my spreadsheet that I utilize. This is, I think, from last year, maybe. But each color will indicate a different activation. I have the day, the event, the area, the time, the sponsor, the name of the cocktail, the amount of product that I'm putting in, the style that it is, the number of serves that I have, the volume, and it does tell me, I have it set up so I can just dump full bottles in for batching. Once you get to batching world, you want to understand just how many bottles you can dump at the same time rather than having to measure everything out at the same time. We always go with 25 ounces as the measurement for 750, 33 for a 1 liter. But yeah, and I always include my suggested dilution in here. I make sure that it says suggested. That way I know that I can adjust on the fly. When we are making drinks and the dilution is going in, we don't fully dilute. We do half of the dilution, we taste, we go from there. And as you can see, like I said, every color is a specific activation. So here's an example of where you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cocktails in the same activation that we had to prepare and get ready to batch out. So it's like, everything can be different. Here's one thing. Here's a sea lip breakfast. It's just one thing that we had to do. Super neat, super easy. Here's a 3-part. Here's a 4-part. Like it's crazy. It's all. I love making drinks for camp. I think it is such a science. It is such a wonderfully sketched out thing that completely goes to hell once you're there because of whether an ingredient doesn't show up or the weather's so super bad or you just have to change something on the fly. But it is totally possible. I know the acid stuff, the citrus is definitely a big thing that people probably want to talk about. But I do believe that you are able to use citrus stock, fresh juice, true brand acid adjustments with your basic acids that you know of. Use your acid adjusted syrups, acid adjusted liquors. There's so many different options of what you can do. I keep this super cost effective too. Not only are we not wasting anything, this is a very well executed week worth of stuff that is kept to a very low number. And that's not because I'm limited. It's because I love doing everything in budget-friendly kind of senses. So I'll stop talking and see if there are questions. But
yeah, if anybody has any questions, please type them into the thread there on the side. But I mean, all of this is like such good information. Like learning about this juice and how to stretch, I think is super important, obviously. And the waste thing is huge. There's so much waste. People are so wasteful. So thank you for all the knowledge that you have. You're very, you're like an expert, you know, like and you care. I think that's where it starts, is you care.
Yeah,
so thank you for that.
I absolutely care. And it's really being versatile and like try to play around with different alternatives to plain juice and taste them and trust your palate to be able to adjust to the right kind of flavor that you want to get. You also might make a citrus stock. You could make a lemon or a lime citrus stock and change it for each cocktail that you're putting into. You may need more of a mouthfeel. You may need more sourness. You may need different things per cocktail. Like you can start with a base and then be able to just play around from there. I think it's just trying to be able to be flexible. Another type of stretching class, be flexible with the ingredients that you have and what you're working with for every single cocktail, and just play with your drinks, taste your drinks, make sure you make fun drinks.
Drink your drinks.
Drink your drinks.
Well, I don't see any other questions coming through. I just want to say thank you to Portland Cocktail Week for allowing us to partner with you guys on all of this cool content. I feel like every week I'm learning something new, and 9 times out of 10, it's something I didn't know before. So I appreciate all of you kind of giving us all of your knowledge. It's really cool. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for sponsoring cool things like this as well. Like there are a lot of geeks like me out here that just want to teach you everything that we know.
Perfect. And also anybody that's watching right now, please follow our Instagram feed at Campari Community. You'll be able to see all the things that Campari's doing with Portland Cocktail Week or other. So please follow us. And if you have any further questions that pop up in your head for Amie, I'm sure that you can just send her a quick message on Facebook or Instagram, and she'd be glad to answer any of your questions from here on out.
Absolutely. And I'm always willing to share my spreadsheets too with anybody if anybody wants to use them. Plus I have some costing ones I didn't put into here, but like, let me know if you need spreadsheets. I got them. They all have formulas in there. It's plug and chug. It's really nice.
Those costing ones are money. Those costing ones are good. Make your life easier. Well, Amie, thank you very much for all of the information. I really appreciate it. And I am still mind blown. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
You do the same. Bye.
Bye.
And live stream's out. Thank you so much, Amie. What a great class.